Well, instead of blogging, I thought I would make a video for you this week. I don't know how it is where you are, but where we live, our family has chosen to be in quarantine now for day 37 today. One of my children has an underlying health condition that, coronavirus would have a drastic effect on. So we've decided to limit how much we go out, stay in the house. Of course, for half of us, I work at home. Two of our kids do school at home. So having the other two home, it adds to all of that. So 6 of us in the house, but we've managed to survive. So I'm hearing this week that some things are beginning to change, in that some states are beginning to consider opening things up a little bit. Other states are going the other direction because they're seeing more cases, they're seeing more tragedies in their states, and it's a very uncertain time. I mean, we don't know if this will be another month or another 2 months, or in some cases another year. I've heard some conversation about states that are going to limit gatherings over a certain number of people well into next year. So we just don't know how this is going to be. And yet I think that in a moment like this, because it disrupts our normal pattern of doing things, it's a good time to reevaluate how we've been doing things. And so we need to begin to think about this. I'm hearing churches that have never had online services before talk about how their weekend attendance has grown dramatically because of online services. I was talking to a church in South Georgia. It's a legacy church of about 400 people, solid congregation, put their services online and have seen twice as many people online on the weekend service than they would normally see in attendance. Talking to another church in Southern California, a much larger church of 10,000 on the weekend, that on Easter Sunday had 200,000 people viewing and had the largest offering in the history of the church. Now, I know everyone is not experiencing this the same. Not everybody is embracing this the same. And everybody has a unique set of circumstances. But I think with this online audience, there's also an opportunity for online groups. And I've written a number of things over the last few weeks related to starting online groups and helping online groups. And you can go back in the blog and find those posts at alanwhite.org. But my question would be, how do you disciple your online followers? Now, in some cases, this started out as people needing conversation and not just more content. And so people are isolated, they're alone, they're getting a steady diet of news, which produces more fear than it does encouragement. And so allowing people to have a place to have conversation. And so one of the churches that I'm working with, they increased their groups by 50% over what they had before. The simple math is, prior to the pandemic, they had 60 groups, and they added another 30 groups when they introduced the idea of online groups. I know other churches have kind of struggled with getting online groups going, and I think it really has to do with the approach. If the approach is, here's an opportunity, sign up, and it's very passive, then you're not going to get a great result. But if the approach is, connect with some people that you know, give them a call, send them an email, send them a text, and invite them to be in this online group with you, that, the basis of a group is a relationship. And so you just throw people together, it may happen or it may not. But the ones that are succeeding are the ones that are starting out with a relationship, and then maybe you add in a few more people that are wanting to connect in a group, but maybe they don't know as many people, or maybe they don't want to start a group on your own. So how are you discipling your online followers? I think even going back to the idea of a church service, that if you have visitors at a church service, you typically have some sort of follow-up. So how are you collecting their information? How are you following up on your online visitors? The next step is usually some sort of assimilation process, as much as I hate that term, but the idea of, do you have a growth track? Do you have next steps? Do you have a membership class? Why not go ahead and put that online and make that available to folks? All right, so question number 1, how do you disciple your online followers? Question number 2, how do you transition online groups to offline groups, or do you? And I actually think that's a big enough topic then I'm just going to leave that right there and I'm going to blog about it in a week or so. Because I've actually had that experience of starting in an online group and then meeting in person. And I'll admit, there's a little bit of weirdness involved. All right, question number 3. What will you do differently after quarantine? What has quarantine taught you? What is important to you personally? What isn't as important to you personally? What were you spending time on before in your ministry that now that you realize maybe it wasn't even that necessary? Maybe you can just dispense with that. What are some things that you've started doing? Maybe you're exercising more regularly. Maybe you're having your quiet time. Maybe you're spending more time with your children. Maybe you're getting outside more within the restrictions that we have to follow. But what are you going to do differently after quarantine? What meetings don't have to go so long? What meetings don't have to happen? What meetings could continue to be held online and don't need to be held in person? And I'm not saying we should make it all digital and technical and electronic and impersonal, but I'm thinking that some of it could be more efficient. Because what I'm hearing, and my assumption was, oh, well, people aren't going to be as busy because they have all this time on their hands. They don't have to commute to the office. They don't have all of these meetings. What I'm hearing is people are actually busier and they're more productive. One church that I was talking with said that they're actually considering allowing people to have more flexible schedules and work off-site, because without so many meetings and without so many interruptions from the phone or somebody popping into their office, they're actually becoming more productive. So, what are you going to change? What are you learning now in quarantine that you're going to do differently afterwards? 4th question. After being away from the office for a few weeks, what is clearly unnecessary at this point? And I kind of tagged into the last one, but what's unnecessary? What doesn't need to happen anymore? What do you not want to go back to? And if you have the ability to control that, then do it. I heard somebody a long time ago, it may have been John Maxwell, that said, if there are things that you don't want to do, just stop doing them and see if anybody misses it. And if it wasn't John Maxwell, I apologize. Okay, the last question is this. How do you need to prepare for the next crisis? How do you need to prepare for the next crisis? Hopefully, we won't see another pandemic like this in our lifetime. But we don't know. We never saw this one coming. So what do we need to do differently? Well, first of all, make sure you have plenty of toilet paper on hand, for Pete's sake, right? And maybe a few canned goods in the pantry, just in case you can't go to the store. But seriously, how do you need to prepare? What do you need to have in place? A lot of people were scrambling to get an online service going. And some of them honestly still have not figured that out yet. So what do you need to have in place? Or thinking through online small groups, thinking through series that you would offer, thinking through pastoral care when you can't make personal contact with people, even people that are in the hospital. What do you need to have in place? What are the needs of your community? I look at the Dream Center in Los Angeles that has provided hundreds of thousands of meals to people in Los Angeles, and have had donations, and they cook, and people come through like a drive-through just to feed people that are in need. And you've seen expressions of this, and your church has done some of these things. One church I'm talking to, their staff, they make 160 phone calls a week. That's their goal, to people in their congregation to see how they're doing. They also make N95 masks. So what are some things that you need to have in place that if you said, if I had known we were going to be restricted or stay at home or quarantined this long, if I had known this, this is how we would have prepared. And I'm not saying dig a bunker. I mean, if you feel like it, go ahead. But what are the things that you need to prepare to do ministry? And how can you begin to reach people, to help people, to support people, to give hope during a time when there's so much uncertainty? Now, a week from now, who knows? We could all be at the beach. I kind of doubt it. In fact, I think after some of these restrictions let up, maybe we're going to stay home a little bit longer just because of my son's medical needs. But we don't know. And uncertainty does cause a lot of fear. I hope you're calling your people. I hope you're calling your leaders. And if you're smart, you're calling your top givers. I think there are a lot of implications of this. My fear is that some churches aren't going to make it. But maybe there's an opportunity that if one of these churches closes, that your church could open a multi-site in that location. But then there's a larger question. Are multi-sites necessary if everybody can do church online? There are a lot of big questions that are going on, and I didn't mean to even get into those. I meant to stick to my 5. But anyway, I've been thinking about a lot of things. I've been praying for you and your church. I know this is a difficult time to minister, and I pray that you find the right way. But don't waste this time in quarantine.